discussed over the last 3 weeks that we are a people who are longing for hope, who are longing for peace, and who are longing for joy. Yet even more so, we are a people who are longing for love. We love a good story, don't we? Don't we love a good story? I hear some yes, that's good. I was going to say, we don't like bad stories, right? Like, let's bring on that boring story, everyone. It's going to be great. But we love a good story. How many of you have watched movies about Jesus at any various point in your life? Just King of Kings, Jesus of Nazareth, the greatest story ever told. What's that? We've all watched something about Jesus at some point. How many of you have seen the nativity scene represented in the Jesus movies? Or how many of you have actually seen the nativity story, which is a movie solely about the nativity of Jesus? If you have not seen the nativity story, between now and Christmas, find a way to get a copy of it and watch it. It is awesome, and it is obviously fitting for this time of year. Very, very well done, very historically accurate the way they set the scene up, and they take all of the nativities and the nativity stories in Luke and Matthew and put them together as one story in a way that I think does justice to the spirit of both. And just you get a real understanding of what it must have been like to be Mary and Joseph in this time period, accepting what ultimately was going to be a burden among other things for them both. Clearly a joy in the moment of having a child, but the pain and the suffering and the risk involved in having that child was great. And not just the health risks that came with having children in the first century, but the risk that Jesus' life would bring to not only the family, but to an entire people, were nothing short of great. And so this story really brings that all into perspective. But we love to think of the love between Mary and Joseph, don't we? I mean, they were a cute couple, right? Like, they were the couple of couples, if you think about it, at least in our heads. You know, they loved each other, and the things that Joseph would go through for Mary in order to make sure her and the baby and the family were safe. Working his gnarled hands off as a carpenter, which didn't, by the way, in that time just mean working with wood, but working with masonry and with stone, and he was a general laborer. So a hard, blue-collar guy in our day's language, right? Working to keep his family going and keep his family supported. And we think of Mary, who would have spent and invested her entire life in the raising of Jesus and her other children. We think romantically of their marriage and their relationship, of their journey to Bethlehem and the struggle that must have been. And again, we think of them living their lives together, raising the young Jesus. Yet, the reality is that Mary and Joseph's beginnings as a couple were not founded in romantic love, if they were founded in love at all to begin with. I want you to really think about that. Mary and Joseph were not in love when they got married. Mary actually didn't have a choice as to whom she was married. Whether it be to Joseph or Beelzebub. It didn't matter who was going to marry her. What mattered is that she obediently obeyed her parents' wishes and tied the knot. She lived in a world where women were thought of as property. And the purpose of a woman, her sole purpose in life, brace yourselves, her sole purpose in life was to be a good wife and bear lots of children, preferably male children. So you didn't have to pay to have your female children married, right? The more male children, the better. The less female children, the better. This is the world we grew up in. For all you little girls out there, I apologize. This is the reality. did not grow up in that world, right? Meg's like, absolutely. That was not a woman's world back then. To not be a good wife, however you define that, and that is a subjective definition because it depends husband to husband as to who's a good wife and not, right? To not be a good wife and to not bear lots of children, preferably male children, was a shame on not just the woman, but on her entire family. So if you ended up getting a divorce because you lacked in being a wife or you lacked in bearing children, oftentimes the families would not accept the woman back into their home because there was something wrong with her, and they brought shame on the family. Even more of a shame was to break the marital covenant, which actually was in place even before the wedding. Now, we often think of the marital covenant happening at the wedding day. So if you're engaged to somebody and you decide to have a fling with somebody else, you can just call off the engagement, no harm, no foul, right? There's a little harm and foul there, but better than to do it after the wedding day, right? Not so in Mary's day. The vow took place the second the parents said, yes, we give you our daughter, or yes, we take your daughter as the wife of our son. The second that contract was written, that woman was to remain pure for at least a year until the marriage day when she was to be betrothed to the husband. While she was not solely the right of the husband at the point, the husband couldn't sleep with her until the marriage day, so to speak. They couldn't lie in the same bed together, make a family, and live in the same house. But she was to be with no other person until that day, and from that point on, she was going to be with that person from the get-go. For her to do anything else would bring such a shame on the family and such a shame on the community that it brought with it almost certain death. The betrayal of the marital covenant, the denial of the husband of his exclusive rights to Mary's body was considered a capital crime and could be met with capital punishment depending on how the community reacted to it. Now, to be fair, it wasn't just the woman who would necessarily get stoned. It could be the woman and the person who consorted with the woman. But in essence, she'd be stoned to death. So when it says in the scripture that Joseph didn't want to put her to public shame, what that says is Joseph didn't have in his heart to see her stoned to death, and was just going to shoo her away quietly so that nothing happened to her. But here's the reality. The second that Mary said yes to God and became pregnant, all the community saw was A, that Mary and Joseph were doing something they shouldn't be doing prior to their marriage contract, or Mary had been doing something she shouldn't be doing prior to her marriage contract, which would bring death. You can imagine as a pregnant, well-rounded Mary is walking around her community, what that would mean, and what kind of treatment she would get. We think the 50s were bad, and the 30s, 40s, and 50s were bad in terms of the social ramifications of getting pregnant out of wedlock. It was a lot worse in this day and age. So it's safe to say that Mary and Joseph's beginnings were not founded on love. They were founded on obligation. And as Mary says yes to God's will, it becomes very rocky between the two of them because Joseph, let's be fair to Joseph, okay? Mary shows up after a long extended vacation with her cousin Elizabeth with child. Now, Joseph knows he hasn't done anything to make that happen. How would you feel as Joseph? To be fair. That's a little hard to swallow. Oh, sure, the angel of the Lord came to you in the middle of the night. Yes, yes. How convenient, right? So, Joseph's not being a jerk here. He has reason to be upset. But we tend to romanticize this as if, they're just such a cute couple. But that was not their beginnings. Yet while their beginnings were not, Mary and Joseph's relationship is a love story. Because I think both people loved God enough to have a relationship with God. And so even in the midst of not being sure whether they could love one another, and certainly past those circumstances, they loved God enough to have a relationship with God and be in communication with God. And because God's love grew within Mary, we can call this a love story. Mary embraced that love before it was even conceived in her. And Joseph, to be fair, did too. And he not only came to accept that it was God's love growing within Mary, but he embraced it and called it his own. Now I want you to understand the ramifications of what Joseph did here. Because for Joseph to accept this child as his own, how do you think this gets viewed in the community now? That Joseph was doing something he shouldn't have been doing prior to the marriage. That brings shame on Joseph's head. So for Joseph to say, you know what, Mary, I accept your child, even though it's not mine, I accept your child as my own. That's heavy. That's a big decision for Joseph to make, with real consequences. The love that we're talking about came embodied in a person we know to be Jesus the Christ, the babe, the son of Mary, the son of Joseph, by virtue of Joseph accepting that, and the Son of God, the Word made flesh. Brothers and sisters, before we can have hope, before we can have peace, before we can have joy, we need to first embrace love. And by embracing love, we are embracing God, who is love. I want you to understand this. There was nothing easy from the day that Mary said yes to God and the day that Joseph said yes to God and the rest of their lives together. Nothing was easy. They were on the run to Egypt, fearing for being put to death because a king had been born. They were living in poverty under the Roman boot in Nazareth, working their hands to being gnarled and broken so that their family could get by. They were living in fear of what their son was bringing upon their heads as he was preaching around the countryside, healing people, calling leaders out. And certainly when he was put to death, Mary had much to fear, let alone her soul being crushed as she watched her son hang on a cross. By embracing love, we are embracing God, who is love. This love we are being called to embrace takes us not only on some romantic night out, like we tend to think of it nowadays, but on a lifelong journey to Calvary. Just like Jesus' life was set on a course to the cross, so was Mary's life, so was Joseph's life. So were the disciples' lives. So are our lives. It is the kind of love that one will cross land and sea to share with others. It is the kind of love that will sacrifice so that others may have. The kind of love that will cause one to endure all circumstances and risk all things to see God's kingdom fulfilled on earth as it is in heaven. This, my friends, is a love that takes us to the cross, to death. But it doesn't end there. Because if we follow that path, we will surely experience the life that comes in God, even as we forsake the life that the world tries to offer. We celebrate Christmas because Mary and Joseph risked it all, quite literally, for that love. And Christmas serves to remind us that we are called to risk it all for love as well. I pray that reminder sinks in and transforms you as it did Mary and Joseph. So we may say yes to God being born within us, love being born within us, regardless of where it takes us and what the risks and consequences are. Amen. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for your presence in our lives, for the love that you bear within us. Love is not the easy way, but as far as we all should be concerned, it is the only way. Lord, you have said that you are the way, the truth, and the life, and that all who come to the Father come through you. And you are love. May we find our way to you